This is really a collaboration and partnership, one that I am so proud of as president of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. If you've been here, you saw me on a panel, so you should know who I am, Heather Perfetti. But we're here to talk with you about the collaboration that we've had around building a quality assurance agency in the Kurdistan region. And it is such a great and unique opportunity, and one that we celebrate every chance that we get. Honar is a friend and colleague of mine. He came to us several years ago to talk about the possibility of partnering in this way. And at that time, I never could have imagined what we would go through to get to where we landed. And so much of that I want to recognize is because of his leadership, his dedication, his commitment, him navigating political environments, him trying to understand as much as possible about quality assurance from a perspective that he needed to learn. And we were able to partner with him and give him some tools that set us on a path of success. And so I think that he is going to start out talking about some of the history, and Honar can introduce himself and go right into some of the history and why this matters so tremendously.
Thank you, Heather. I should say that if it wasn't because of your support, it would not be easy to navigate through a very challenging and complex environment that we were experiencing it. So my name is Honar Issa. I'm, on the board of trustees at the American University of Kurdistan, but at the same time, I'm the Secretary General of Kurdistan Accrediting Association for Education, the body that Heather alluded to, that we've established at the within the Kurdistan regional government in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. So what I just wanted to talk about, and as a the beginning of the presentation is about, as you could see from the the graph of the international branch campuses that increased from 1999 or 2000 through to 2023, the data that is presented. As you could see, from 2000 to 2023, we have had 50 to 333 institutions established worldwide. And the biggest jump was between 2007 and 2017 with 133 institutions, and afterwards it was just only, there were 45 institutions established. So as you could see, the necessity of, because of those branch campuses, mainly in countries like, in the Middle East, we have China, Singapore, and even in Central Asia, like Uzbekistan, that they try to get these campuses established. And Kurdistan was part of the Kurdistan region, and Iraq only were able to, attract 3 American universities in there: American University of Baghdad, American University of Soleimani, American University of, in the Hope, which is called American University of Kurdistan. So that, necessitated having a robust control over the quality of an institution, and therefore accreditation agencies are going to play a major role in terms of maintaining that quality. So for that, mainly the reason why these IBCs been established is because of the demand and access that they just wanted to have to build capacity for the higher education, as well as economic development, because they wanted to get better, skills for the labor market, and then support diversification of economy of these countries, and financial and other, strategic motives, which partly because, it would generate revenue, and then, it would support the economy to move forward. And most importantly, a lot of them, they just focused on these branch campuses because they wanted to enhance the quality of education and make them as a model for the higher education. And, at this KAAE's, taking care of both K through 12 and higher education, but at this context, we're just focusing on the higher education. So for that, as you know, Iraq, I mean, now focusing on Iraq and the Kurdistan region, Iraq once, was once upon a time the cradle of civilization. As we had like the knowledge center in Baghdad, and then later on became, kind of a hub for innovation. Yeah. But then until the war started between Iraq and Iran, and that was basically the start of declining the education system. The war lasted 8 years, followed by another war, which was between Iraq and Kuwait, and then resulted in a huge sanction from United Nations because of the invasion of Kuwait. Eventually, after months, 40 days, they just withdraw. But then the sanction maintained, and even Kurdistan region was the time 1991 when the Kuwait War and Iraq War happened. Kurdistan region was formed, but it was not recognized internationally. It was kind of an autonomous area, which it was a no-fly zone resolution by the United Nations, and it became sort of an autonomous region that was not controlled by Saddam that time. Saddam was the president of Iraq. So then Kurdistan region itself was under double embargo. I would say one, disconnect from international community by the UN resolution, and then Iraqi central government completely. And then that time, Kurdistan region had 3,000 schools and 3 universities. By 2003, when the Iraq was liberated by U.S. and coalition forces invasion, they started working on education system. But then that followed, the Iraq itself followed with the civil war in 2007, and then in 2014 we had ISIS. So it affected the education system. As a matter of fact, from 2003 through that time, the Kurdistan regional government, endeavored on several initiatives in order to do the reform of education. They partnered with RAND Corporation, based in California. They worked with British Council, and through that RAND Corporation, they started, coming up with some strategies and initiatives to mainly, suggestion of infrastructure and access, and teacher development, curriculum, let's say, review, TVET, which was another part. And then most importantly, RAND just focused on reforming the organizational structures of the ministries. That they thought that should be the starting point. And another one was British Council that tried to bring, or let's say model after the quality assurance of the United Kingdom, which focusing on program level accreditation and then focusing on curriculum, English language, and so on and so forth. So as you could see, these organizations did not take into consideration one factor, and that was the complex Kurdistan environment. And within the context of Kurdistan, they actually, because of relying more on the expats, they could not bring the context of Kurdistan into the discussion and into the initiative. After several, so many years of efforts by the Kurdistan regional government, they came to the point that the standardization is the key. And then there has to be a sustainable process and a mechanism to review, the quality assurance. And as a matter of fact, in 2021, there was a discussion on establishing the accreditation agency by the Kurdistan regional government. And then we realized this has to be done in partnership with an international accreditation like Middle States Commission on Higher Education. So we started having this conversation, and then the result was to send a draft of law or a bill to the government, to the parliament of the Kurdistan region by the Council of Ministers. And I must say the support of Prime Minister Barzani and the other members of the cabinet was very vital in terms of sending the bill to the parliament. And the parliament, it was kind of a bipartisan consensus on that, and then it was ratified in 2022. which became a law, and then we started implementing it. So this is the brief history of what we had in terms of establishing it, and again, what we did, which I'm going to talk about it, how we came up with, the implementation process. We, after, just leave some, give it to the floor to Heather to talk about the others, but I'm going to talk about how we came up with implementation and establishing the standards in there.
And so the history is so critical, and what we will talk about as part of this presentation is also challenges and opportunities. When you are lifting a quality assurance agency from its beginnings and from a foundation, you realize very quickly all of the moving pieces and all of the skills and expertise that you have to tap that may be around you. I will also just note that Honar's affiliation with the American University of Kurdistan, they are accredited by the New England Commission. It was at a time that our commission had a moratorium on accrediting any new international institutions. We have since lifted that moratorium, and so we have invited international higher education institutions back to considering the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. So, I went back and looked at when did we connect initially? And it was what probably at the time felt like a random sort of outreach from Honar. I was about a year in to my presidency at the Middle States Commission, and then we held our first meeting, I think, on May 20th, 2021. And that is really what began our relationship. What you see here is we invited a Kurdistan delegation to Philadelphia, and that was in 2022. And that was a real critical meeting for us because it brought together the delegation from Kurdistan, Honar, of course, facilitating the introductions, but it also included our K-12 partners. You heard Honar speak about how important it was to include K-12 as an element of what they were developing. So bringing us together initially was really a way to solidify that approach. Of course, we, as the Commission of Higher Education, we were, I say, birthed out of the Middle States Association. We used to be one. And so them as a partner, we were familiar with them. We actually shared office space with them when we had it in Philadelphia. We knew the way they operated. They knew the way we operated, even though we became separately incorporated. And so this gathering in Philadelphia was really the launching point for everyone to sit around a table, to dialogue about the initiative, and to get ready for what was to come next. So the opportunity to meet each other, the opportunity to learn from each other, certainly to talk about accreditation, but more importantly, to engage around what we knew and what we didn't know, and try to figure out how is that going to set the stage for what comes next. And so if you fast forward then to a signing ceremony that we held in Washington, this also was critically important. It was really celebratory of all of the ways that we were sharing our expertise to get to the moment of lifting up the Quality Assurance Agency. And the Prime Minister so invested in this as a major initiative for the region. And all of the partners so incredibly proud to show up in DC and celebrate this. And I think part of what we learned along the way was how important these moments become, not just to do it privately with us, but to do it very publicly so people could see what it was that we were contributing to the developments in the Kurdistan region. We marked several ways to get to sharing of resources. I am a member of KAAE's Board of Trustees, and I think I'm on every committee, just about. So we had to develop bylaws, and we worked with Honar and his team to develop bylaws that fit the environment and fit the expectations of the Prime Minister as well. So developing bylaws. Honar also became an evaluator for our commission, so he could go out and be a part of the work that we did as an evaluator, which gave additional insights into him as well. Inviting him to participate in our conferences, in our training events, really immersing him into the work that we did so he could then translate that into what does KAAE need to be, what does KAAE need to do, and what kind of financial model and what kind of staffing is going to be most appropriate for the institutions there and for the work that he envisioned. I think some of the challenges were certainly getting at the right model and putting that into documentation and into practice, but I'll let you talk a little bit about some of that.
Yes, thank you, Heather. You know, the biggest challenge we had, it was basically because universities and the schools were not monitored or controlled by an entity other than Ministry of Education and Higher Education, with several, other criteria that they had. It was very hard to get into the, convincing Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Higher Education, that it should be an independent entity to control the quality assurance. And then we had to explain. And I remember the first time when we wanted to get, discuss the vision and mission of the institution, we had to get everybody in the same room, even if they did not have the sort of input that we wanted them to have and we want to hear, but they participated in a discussion. So we just wanted to tell them, this is the institution that you own, and feel that you're part of it, feel that in order to make it sustainable, feel that you're going to be you're going to be involved in the advancement of the institution as well. So another challenge was, because we wanted to, they had seen some other initiatives that did not work, there was no trust. The public trust was not there, organizational trust, was not there. Then we need to show how impactful the organization would be as a quality assurance, and then assuring quality and quality control. Therefore, we started, negotiating with different factions, negotiating with universities, schools, that this is how it's not only about controlling the quality of education, but also about building capacity. That means the faculty member is going to be involved in the process. The faculty member would have the hands-on experience, which is going to help them even develop. And for that, we realized that in order to make it more powerful is to get the leaders of the country involved in the process, which means we asked the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, both ministers to be the members of the Board of Trustees. So what we did, based on the law, and then it was the fact that the lack of understanding of the accreditation, and I remember when I was at the Parliament and I had to answer the questions from the MP, one of the questions was, oh, you're not trusting your institutions for the past 30 years, and now you're having another agency to trust. I said, this is not trust. This is, because they mixed it with the trust, that we're not trusting institutions, so we need to have another body. We said there should be an independent body. So we had to explain, we had to raise awareness about how important such an institution would be for the country, for the advancement of education. So we had to get Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, as I said, the two ministers, because Kurdistan, there's another issue and challenge that the Kurdistan region and Iraq both have Ministry of Education for K through 12 and Ministry of Higher Education for higher education. And because different political parties are taking care of these two ministries, there's a sort of a disconnect between the two. And we thought that KAAE is going to resolve this by having the commissions. Because KAAE has two commissions of K through 12 and Commission of Higher Education. So they work collaboratively to make sure that this disconnect does not, does no longer exist. So according to law, there was a High Council for Accreditation, which again, these 4 people, and then they added the Secretary General as a member. But then we realized, okay, we have that High Council, but in order for the KAAE to be functioning properly, we need to have a we need to have technocrats. We need to have experts in accreditation. Therefore, we decided to establish, okay, we have the High Council, that's the ultimate authority according to the law, but in the same time, we can have Board of Trustees. And then Board of Trustees could be, could comprise of, it could be comprised of the four, let's say, plus the Secretary General and the experts in accreditation, which we have now 10 experts internationally, including Heather from Middle States. And then because we're partnering with Middle States Association, the commissions on elementary and secondary school, so the members of those, this organization is part of it. And we have some evaluators, experts in accreditation across the United States, a member of the Board of Trustees. So what we did, we said, because you're making the ultimate decision, let's make that decision within the Board of Trustees, because they will help you as members of the Board of Trustees. They will help you come up with a sound decision that is for the best interest of the process. So they accepted, and it has given so much power to the accreditation agency, because when the Parliament ratified it, it mandated all academic institutions from K through 12 to higher education, and even those institutions under other organizations that they do certificate programs. It's mandated for all institutions to undergo. It's not like, accreditation by choice, but our vision is not just only to be maintaining within the Kurdistan region, but also to encourage the other institutions outside Kurdistan region to be applying for the accreditation process. So for that, we started with two commissions, Commission on K through 12 and Commission of Higher Education. As commission of, both commissions are partnered with Middle States, both higher education and elementary and secondary schools. And then we're working on, at this point, a lot of challenges maintained in there. One of the challenges is the funding issue. And the reason why even we had KAAE established is, okay, we're just going to use it as a leverage for educational reform, and this is what the government, the KRG cabinet, Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and the rest wanted to have. And even to be objective in terms of allocation of funds. Instead of allocating fund to a certain institution, we would say we're allocating funds for you to be able to comply with the standards the KAAE established. So we started negotiating again with as Heather mentioned, negotiating with the stakeholders in terms of the standards. We knew we have governance issue. We knew we have, the academic programs, the curricula are outdated. We knew we need to focus on that in the accreditation standards. We knew there's another issue with the student services and support. We had a major issue with the facilities, and then transparency. So we focused on that in terms of accreditation. We wanted to, in terms of the standards development, we wanted to get the opinion and the view of stakeholders. We held several workshops with academic institutions. We invited them to be, having their voices in the draft. And then we came up with a set of standards that would take the context of Kurdistan region into consideration. And then at the same time, because we didn't have any program level accreditation, we even were able to put larger elements of program level accreditation into the standards, so you would be completely, together or integrated together as program and institutional level. So as you could see, this is part of the workshops and seminar, because as part of the 5-year operational plan, the first year was to raise awareness, and then having raise awareness is just inviting them for focus group, doing webinars as we do with Middle States. Also having seminars, inviting board members who are visiting Kurdistan to hold some of those seminars as you could see. And then we had the strategic plan retreat. And then in the strategic plan retreat based on the mission, even it was not just to to take their view into consideration, but also to show them how you come up with strategic planning as part of the standard. Because one of the standards that we have is just, you need to have a mission-oriented strategic planning, and then you need to have KPIs that you need to have an implementation process in place. So for that, we gathered around 70 institutions in the same room, and then we had a day-long workshop on how to develop a strategic planning. Came up with 3 guiding principles, and then goals for each principle, at least 3, and then KPIs, and send it to even stakeholders, send it to our partner in order to comment on that. So, and this is part of the strategic plan. And after the retreat we had internal discussions on the strategic planning, come up with the KPIs, and then changing or exchanging views on that. And this is the KAAE team that we had the meeting about strategic planning after the workshop.
I think what I would add is the development of those standards and the development of the strategic planning process, and all of the efforts to get institutions prepared and better informed and in the conversation was really critical. I know that we were partners in looking at the drafts of the standards and giving feedback, and part of that was Honar indicating in our environment and our culture that particular piece of feedback would not necessarily be relevant. So taking the work that we're doing together and modifying it into the environment, using his expertise in what would work within that environment. But what we have found with our standards is that they apply well in the international environment because they are driven by mission. We are not prescriptive as an accreditor, and obviously Honar was familiar with our standards, also familiar with the New England Commission standards, so had a good basis for analysis on the starting point to begin to drive that discussion. Also having the opportunity to present to the board about accreditation, and I know I had the honor to do that with the Prime Minister and his team, and then also with the initial meeting of the board, and just beginning to talk about accreditation in a way that is helpful and useful, and reiterating all of what Honar had been saying for years at that point about the value of accreditation, about how important this was for the educational institutions and how important it was for the region. And so being able to come together around standards that mattered as an initial launch and continue to look at refining them, and then rolling out the educational pieces, which is done in all of these venues and all of these environments. And one area we are looking at is also sharing peer evaluators, so that our peer evaluators can begin to contribute to the work in the Kurdistan region. And those efforts are really going to be fruitful. Our peer evaluators are really exciting about opportunities in the international environment, and this particular model and this particular relationship we have been sharing with our constituents since we came together, to let them know this was important to us, we want them to contribute, and we're going to find out how.
Exactly. One of the end point, let's say, of the accreditation was to internationalize academic institutions in the Kurdistan region. So because the accreditation concept was quite new, there, universities are used to not to be checked, or, and then for that, even the level, we could not get, because being international, in addition to the governance, that is true in the Kurdistan region, but we try to establish that infrastructure within the next 3 years.
I think assessment is always, especially with our commission, one of the challenging pieces for all of our institutions. And it's why we are so focused on providing some supplemental support for our institutions. Often it's not that institutions are not doing assessment. They have trouble talking about it or sharing the best kinds of evidence with our evaluators when they're on site.
How are you dealing with bilingual documentation?
Yeah, that's it.
Arabic is, to us as English speakers, it's a tough language.
That's right.
So how are you?
So for every single document that we produce, we translate them into Kurdish and Arabic as well. The website that we have, I think that we had it, and then until the revamp happened, we had the website with 3 languages of English, Kurdish, and Arabic. But now we have English and Kurdish, we're going to add Arabic. But yes, this is another challenge. And for example, our director of K through 12 commission, she is Lebanese, she speaks Arabic and English. She has to go to the school and then take a translator for some of the schools that, they don't speak either English or Arabic. So they had to have a Kurdish translator. So we have those challenges, but again, there's always a mechanism in place in order to make sure that every other, the 3 languages are addressed.
And we have that challenge as well, because we have a requirement of affiliation that requires communication in English.
And then we have
And so we're operating across the globe, but we have a 3-tier evaluation process. So we have our peer evaluators on site, then we have a committee. So we have to make sure that that evidence is in a format that our committee can review and read and talk about. And then we have our commission. So we require documents in English, and that sometimes creates some challenges for our institutions too.
All right. So yes.
So I know we're out of time, and we're the only thing between you and lunch, I think.
Yeah.
So please tap our resources. Honar and his team has been featured on a podcast too, which we're really proud of. And so if you have not seen that podcast, be sure to look that up. Any questions you might have, we're always available to help answer those.
And then one thing that I want to focus is just that for, what we're proud of is the fact that we have the support of everyone after a 2-year discussion. So I know the initiative is from Prime Minister Barzani, but you have the support of Deputy Prime Minister Talabani and the 2 ministries. And this is what we're proud of, honestly, within that institution, to get a consensus on an initiative that is for the best interest of education.
And sit with them at the board meetings.
Yes.
I mean, that is what really demonstrates their commitment. They give so much time to us as a board.
Such a great presentation.
Thank you.